Well, good morning, everybody. We are live on both LinkedIn and YouTube. Super excited about this. So, James, I guess welcome to Conf Defense Insights. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, it's been a really fun day so far. This is our first live stream, so we're kind of all working out the kinks and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I just wanted to just kind of dive into what was a pretty interesting week this week so far. There are a couple of big things that happened this week, which was really, one was the Drizzly breach. Last summer, Drizzly had a breach. As you know, because you and I were both impacted by this thing, we got the notifications that the class action lawsuit just came around today. So I want to talk about that a little bit this morning and how people need to start, how we as security leaders can reframe some of the conversations we're having with other leaders in the organization about it, because I thought there's a couple of cool, interesting insights coming out of that breach. But why don't we get kicked off with the article that got posted on betterappsec.com this week about continuous pen testing. I thought it was a great article, well written, but I was hoping you could just talk about it and explain the article, where it's coming from, where you're going with that.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, thank you for bringing that up. Mackay McClintock is actually the person who wrote it, and sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Mackay. But anyway, really good article. He had been working on it for a couple months, and he had reached out to me because he's following my content, and he's like, hey, I've got some ideas, would love to publish them. And I think this one is a great complement to some of the stuff that I had previously posted about pen testing. And I approached the topic of pen testing more so of like, okay, well, what are the manual application security testing techniques that kind of get classified as pen testing? Like, what are they? What's the value, and how would you set that type of program up? So Mackay came in and was like, that's all well and good, you got it set up, but like, well, how do you take that to the next level, right? Like, how do you get this to a well-run machine? So I think some of the strategies he's outlined here, right, in order to get there is, I think, a great starting point for folks out there that are more mature, right? Like, not starting pen testing from scratch per se, but like, okay, I have some compliance requirement that requires me to do pen testing once a year, but I see the value here and I want to take that to the next level. So I think, again, right, like what he outlines here around integration into the dev SecOps lifecycle, so to speak, right? Like getting more involved on a continuous basis as things change incrementally. Approaching that pen testing journey alongside of it, right? So the pen testing is happening in conjunction to continuous development, and I think it starts to optimize not just the cost structure from a time and resource perspective, but it optimizes the risk reduction, kind of discussion as well, right? Well, we're finding things, we're finding more things, we're finding them more frequently, and we're fixing them more frequently and earlier, right? So it's this kind of holistic approach to getting really high value security vulnerabilities found on a continuous basis. And it's not that this isn't like we're going to run a vulnerability scan. This is somebody doing an actual manual assessment. So hats off to Mackay on writing this and publishing it on BetterAppSec. I really appreciate his contribution here, and I think he's probably going to post some more stuff. So follow along, folks out there.
I loved it too, and I think Mackay did an excellent job in this post. And one of the things I loved about the basic concept behind this post is, again, the whole ethos of this is don't do it once, don't do a big thing once a year, make it small, make it continuous. Yeah. And I've really found that's been helpful for me in the programs that I run, because it's, the auditor wants to see a big report and at the end said all things were green, but like the reality of the situation is in a dynamic, fast moving, always changing environment. Like from a risk perspective, I actually want to know, okay, you're releasing new mutexes on that GraphQL endpoint. Okay, what impact is that going to have, right? What is that small change going to have? So let's go pen test that. And if I can get a pen tester in for like a week to just focus in on that and really see what you can exploit, I get results back faster. As a security leader, I'm like hearing the results back faster. I know what my risk is immediately. I'm not waiting a calendar year to realize not only did I have that risk, it's been sitting there with all of its vulnerabilities for a year now before we can even start to discover it, before we can even start to fix it. So really, when you do like an annual pen test, what you're saying is the dwell time of vulnerabilities is effectively like 18 months between by the time you schedule a pen test, do the thing, and then fix the problem. So again, just focusing on reducing that dwell time. This is a great tool for that.
This type of thing would have benefited Drizzly handsomely. I don't know if that's a good segue or not.
Yes, I think it's a perfect segue. So I did want to talk about Drizzly because this, and I'll pull this up here for the folks watching. So last summer, Drizzly had this data breach.
The zero folks watching? Yeah.
The 400,000 people who have tuned in right now and are commenting on this. I appreciate the love. Yes, my hair is always this good. So last summer, Drizzly had this breach, right? And what I found interesting is that like right now, so the clock starts, and then of course here we are about 6 months later. Sorry, even more than that. Sorry, almost like 9 months later, we have the class action lawsuit come out. So when security leaders were talking, when we talk to our peer group inside the organization about a breach, I think the points I wanted to highlight here are a couple things. One is Drizzly didn't have credit card data. They're using an outsourced payment processor. So a lot of people out there say, well, hey, don't worry, we don't have financial information, so we don't really have to worry about a breach. It's not going to be that costly. Well, having credit card information would have made it more costly, absolutely. It goes to show you that even if you just have consumer data, right, just first name, last name, login emails, they had locations for delivery and a little bit of GPS data in there from people using the app. So there's nothing financial about it. It wasn't regulated under HIPAA. It wasn't anything, it wasn't biometric identity. It was just regular user identity. And here we see that you have a class action lawsuit for their advertising somewhere between $3.5 to $7.5 million. So if you take the average cost of a breach from the Verizon data breach reports for a company that's up to about 500 employees, which is about the size of Drizzly, the average cost of a breach is like $3 to $3.5 million. Then they've got a class action lawsuit on top of that, which is going to be 3 to 7. Let's split it down the middle and say $5 million. So you're looking at $8 to $8.5 million that this company is going to fork out because of this breach that affected 2.5 million of its customers. And that's not even including the churn. How many customers no longer use Drizzly because they're like, never mind, I'll just go use the competitors that they're trying to disrupt, like minibar.com and other things like that. So for me, coming out of this, I was just like, this was a great point. You don't have to have financial data for you to be a focus of an adversary. You don't have to have financial data to get a $10 million or $8 to $10 million check cost because of a data breach. So I just thought there was a lot of lessons that could be learned here. And also just think about all the lawyer fees that have been going on for the last 9 months as they've been negotiating back and forth and trying to defend against a class action lawsuit. So breaches are expensive. I think that's kind of the TLDR here.
Yeah, I always, one of the things that I do after some of these things happen, right, is I go over to their career website and a few months or a month or two after and see who they're hiring. And I saw at one point or another that they were hiring a chief privacy officer, I want to say. So, but better late than never. I don't know. I don't see it on here anymore, but I had saw someone post it in one of the Slack communities we're in. But yeah,
it's a fair point, right? So I'm glad they got that going. Also, I saw security engineer posting get put up about 2 weeks after this was made public. So I think the big component here is, as security leaders, just like having these facts in our conversations with our peer group, so that we can just kind of set the tone. If you're a company and you're like, hey, we take payments, but it's handled by Braintree, it's handled by Stripe, it's not our problem, you can still have a significant dollar fine with this. And then also remember, with CCPA, there's civil action where individuals can come together, like we see in this class action lawsuit, and then sue the company for being negligent.
Yeah.
So fun times all around. And then on we go.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I had signed up, I think the week before, or it was like on the precipice of their data breach. And I never even used the service. I just was like, oh, this is interesting. My brother-in-law had signed up and used it, and he was like, oh, this worked out well. And so I signed up again and never used it. I put all my information in. I'm like, it's a lot of information, but I guess like risk reward, right? It was during the pandemic. I'll trade, not having to go into it. It's just like early on, like, not going into a liquor store or whatever.
Yeah.
So anywho, I hope that they do, learn from this and say, all right, well, what are the fundamental things that we need from a cybersecurity risk mitigation perspective to put in place in order to deal with these types of things more proactively rather than retroactively. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I'm with you on that. And last but not least, I want to talk about the statistic that really just, can I use the phrase moved me? I don't know, to rage or to something else, but I was definitely moved by this. So this article is a few months old, and basically what the headline here from Dark Reading tells you what I'm looking for here, which is that cybercrime may be the third largest economy by 2021. How do they get that number, right? You just like, here's the GDP of all the countries that are out there according to the World Economic Forum. You look at the cost of cyber crime, and you just figure out where on that sliding scale does it match. So it's kind of insane, but we're in a world now where cybercrime is the third largest GDP in the world. And then we're still kind of stepping up to it as a security community and trying to figure out how to get our hands around it. And it just totally feels for so many security leaders that we're completely behind the eight ball if we're going to try and solve these problems. Like the caliber of problem and like the solution brought to that, it's the classic bring a knife to a gunfight scenario. But more accurately, it's like, let's bring in completely understaffed industry where we're unable to fill the seats that we already know about. And we're going to bring that to tackle on the world's third largest economy. It's just apples and oranges in our response to it. So this has truly motivated me to kind of step up my game and help us as a community, like have more community engagement, help with sharing great ideas through the guests on the podcast. But when I saw this, it kind of just crystallized everything for me. It's just like the caliber of problem and the caliber of solutions being applied are, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, they're at a different magnitude. The problem is a magnitude larger than the solution at this point. So I'm not sure, James, how you felt about this when this started getting circulated, or...
I mean, the first thing that I thought of was, okay, this is a very doom and gloom outlook, right? Okay, it feels like if we do nothing, this will be the second largest, most concerning risk for the world. And I think that it is a significant risk. But as I think about like existential threats to the world, like cyber risk should not be top, like in the second slot, right? It should be basically like it is sustainability, right, of our I guess like the health of our planet, right? Like that should be one. Like, or is it melt? Is like all the polar caps melted, right? Or all our crops dead, right? Do we know how no longer have like the sustainability to support human life on Earth, right? That should be like one. We should always be thinking about that. And then the second one should be right, like the like world peace and hunger kind of thing. That did I lose my data because of a data breach? Right, like that should be like fifth, sixth at best, or worst, one of those. I just like I think that we really need to change the way that we think about this problem, so that how do we keep cybersecurity risk out of the top 10 concerns for the globe? All right, right now we're in a bad trend line, and we should really be communicating around tangible actions we need to take and continue to take in order to keep that at bay, and really making people fundamentally aware as to where this sits in the priority order. What I was just saying, like, again, I don't know how this person forecasts this being the second, most concerning risk for global commerce, but like if we don't have human beings that are eating food to work at these companies, like it's
right. But I'm gonna give you a thought on that though. Considering the rate of which we put food production, we put clean technology, we're putting our critical infrastructure on the internet. I mean, this one's specifically looking at the financial impact of cybersecurity, right? But then we see, every year they have whatever the institution is that puts out their top risks for the world. I think that's what you're referring to there.
Yeah.
And having that global view risk report, I think the cybersecurity component for me is like, I just don't see technology, and like the technology component is so ingrained in the solution for sustainability, for green technologies, for food production, that I think they start to like just merge together. So if you have a vulnerable foundation, making material progress in those areas will always be undermined.
That I agree with. Yeah, how do we bake in security into the foundation of the technology that we use to solve some of these bigger, more existential risks and threats to humanity? Yeah, 100%.
100%, dude. Okay, so now we did have someone actually comment in, so I'm not sure if you saw that come in. So
I did not.
Mike Antico. So good morning, Mike.
Oh, God. Mike, good to have you here. 2000 seconds. Love it.
Awesome, guys. Well, that brings us to about 10 a.m. That brings us to the wrap. So we're going to get into a better flow. We're going to be doing this on a weekly basis starting in 2 weeks' time. So we'll be doing some morning coffees. I'll get us a little bit more organized on LinkedIn. And Mike, if you're still tuned in and you'd like to jump on the podcast, you know how to reach me. We'd love to have you.
That'd be a good conversation. We should.
Yes, it would. It'd be awesome.
All right.
Okay. With that, everyone, have a great 4th of July, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks.